The November 17 BPAC Commission meeting. I am Joe Caruso, the chair, and we'll start with the introductions. I guess we'll go around, go our vice chair to the right and go around.
William Smith, vice chair on the Outreach Committee.
Celeste Bravo-Taylor, Planning Committee.
Tammy Stern, Planning Committee.
Amy Wabike on the Policy Committee.
Ethan Gallagher, Outreach Committee.
Brittany Bryan, Policy Committee.
Brian Thomas, Chair, Outreach Committee.
Barbara Godwin, Transportation Staff.
Will Shoemaker, Transportation Staff.
Okay, thank you. The first item is going to be the approval of the minutes from our previous meeting, which was on September 15. Give everybody a chance to take a last-minute look and ask if there's any items that need amendment. Okay, is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so unanimous approval. Next item is public comment. Is there anybody that would like to make a public comment? Yes, please come up. Yes, please come up to the stand and have public comment for roughly 3 minutes. And if you could just provide your name and address for the record.
Oh, sure. I'm Anna Boone. My address is 3205 Merriman Avenue in Raleigh. Good evening. Thank you all so much for the attention and time tonight. I'm Anna Boone. I'm currently the president of the University Park Community, formerly known as the University Park Homeowners Association. University Park is the neighborhood near NC State between Wade Avenue and Hillsborough Street, Oberlin, and Faircloth. I've lived in University Park for over 12 years now and have loved raising my family in this lovely neighborhood. One of the things that makes University Park so special is Olds Elementary School, which is on Dixie Trail. A lot of children walk or bike to school every morning. University Park is also, of course, filled with a lot of college students from NC State and Meredith College. In fact, we've had students as our next-door neighbors in both of the homes we've lived in within University Park. Students bring a lot of energy and fun to the neighborhood. They also bring a lot of pedestrians since they walk to class, but they also increase the density of young, teenaged drivers. And when you cross this, higher volume of pedestrians with a high density of inexperienced, possibly more distracted drivers, it's a dangerous combination. And of course, this meeting tonight is on the heels of the tragic death of Dr. Natalia Duque Wilkins at the intersection of Clark and Pogue Street last week. Clark, like Brooks Avenue and Dixie Trail and Gardner Street, serves as a cut-through our neighborhood, diverting from Hillsborough Street. And cars often speed down our residential streets. There have been several traffic calming efforts implemented in other parts of the neighborhood, which we're grateful for. And many have had positive results, but sometimes there's unintended consequences. There can be shifting of traffic and speeding to other roads, and on Clark Avenue, a different part of that street between Dixie and Faircloth, there are now small traffic circles which have worked to slow traffic, but then pedestrian crossings now are not intuitive and it's less safe for pedestrians. I believe that traffic calming can work and does work, but we need to obviously coordinate improved measures for pedestrian safety along with those. A couple of recommendations that I'm bringing tonight are to first add more streetlights. This is, really a no-brainer. So on Clark, Brooks Avenue, Dixie Trail, Gardner, these are pretty busy corridors in our neighborhood. Tonight I did notice that the streetlights on Clark seemed brighter. So I was pleased to see that. I don't know if I'm just paying attention to it more or not, but consider adding pedestrian hybrid beacons or the crossing stoplights where feasible. There's one on Hillsborough Street in front of the Alexander Y that I think works well. The Federal Highway Administration claims a 55% reduction in pedestrian crashes with that one solution. The rectangular rapid flashing beacons at crosswalks, there's one example of this on Pullen Road at Dunn Avenue between Campus and Pullen Park. It's a really great way to get drivers' attention to stop the flow of traffic so pedestrians can cross safely. For intersections with existing stoplights, add a leading pedestrian interval or a walk time to give pedestrians time to enter the crosswalk. And then installing speed cameras to stoplights, and especially the crossing light in front of Olds Elementary School. That crosswalk, the light works well, but then cars do speed through there as it's turning. I think there are crosswalks on Clark Avenue, but there's not a imposition to stop traffic if a pedestrian is crossing. So thank you so much for your time and attention and all of, that you've done to make Raleigh a more bike and pedestrian friendly city. It is truly improved over the last 15 years that I've lived here. And we would love to increase the communication and collaboration with our neighborhood. We're the oldest registered neighborhood in Raleigh. And I think it's, 1,000, 2,000 homes or something like that. So it's a large, wonderful pocket of our wonderful city. So thank you again.
Thank you, and thank you for being here and making a comment. I will say, so Ms. Barsness included me on an email earlier this week about this. Just wanted to see if you had any sort of additional comment or context that you wanted to offer.
No, not really. Can you guys all hear me? Yeah. No, not really. Anna, thank you for coming. I do really appreciate it. I think Anna did a fantastic job in her remarks. And I think you guys have all heard me talk about that very particular section because I live a block and a half from where this pedestrian was killed. And so I keep talking about it. But I do think that there are lots of places in the city where we really can improve pedestrian safety. It's really unfortunate that we talk about this when we have pedestrian deaths, but again, I want to thank the city for all your support in hearing me talk about pedestrian safety over and over again. And again, I just want to reiterate, thank you, Anna, for coming and speaking on behalf of my neighborhood. I've lived in the neighborhood since 2002, maybe. So I'm definitely a pedestrian in that neighborhood, and it's really unfortunate. It's really sad what happened, and hoping we can work together to improve that particular corridor. So thank you.
Yeah, I guess I did have a question for staff. Is there your email sort of, I think, trying to find it again, the words, but does staff know, and it can be a follow-up item, I guess, like any sort of specific projects that are already sort of in flight or in the design phase, somewhere through the process coming up that may not sort of be apparent yet?
So no, we would love more information. I asked around when that message got sent to us or sent to me. Mm-hmm. No one was aware of the communication that you referenced.
Okay.
So if you could follow up with more information, we can definitely find the person and get more information on that.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't remember if it's came from the city or from neighbors, but it was basically a request to, are you interested in engaging in, I don't know if it was dialogue or whatnot, but to look at that very particular section. And I know that there have been like neighborhood petitions that go around, and you have to have like maybe at least 50% of the neighbors that live on that street agree to like improvements. It was a letter along those types of lines. Joe, you know the type of letter
Yeah,
I'm talking
yeah.
about. So it may have come from
Okay.
someone in the community. And in full transparency, I received it, I think, maybe it said, please respond in the next couple of weeks. And because this is me, I did not follow up like I should have because, anyway, life gets busy. But I'm not sure who sent it, but I'll try and do some digging on my end. And I'll talk with Anna to see if we can figure out where that came from, if you didn't think it came from the city.
Yes, none of that rings a bell, but again, I don't know all projects. If you could, once you find that out, send it to Ms. Godwin and myself. We can absolutely take a look
Okay.
at that.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just sort of thinking out loud here, but like, I wonder if this is something, I don't, we'd have to look into the specifics, but like, I wonder if it qualifies or not under different things for the neighborhood traffic calming program. And like, because I know, I think the speed limit's 35 currently, getting some nods.
I honestly don't know.
So, on Clark, yeah. I'm just throwing it out there. So like, I'm wondering if maybe that's part of the issue, is that it's currently not qualified for that program. It's also sort of a thoroughfare for better, for worse, so.
Right, as is the other section of Clark. And we have a question in the audience, but real quickly, I think it was related to traffic calming, and maybe, what program does that fall under? Is that under you all? Because it could have been something like that.
So all traffic calming, as you are discussing it, flows through the neighborhood traffic management program.
Okay.
I can confirm that that did not come from our group because this section of Clark Avenue is classified as a minor thoroughfare and therefore is not eligible for treatment through the neighborhood traffic management program.
What are the options for, traffic calming or different lighting, things like that on Clark, since it's not part of, it doesn't qualify for that program?
So how we operate generally is that Vision Zero and our traffic operation tend to focus on the more thoroughfare streets. The neighborhood traffic management program focuses on minor collectors and local streets. That's generally the division in who takes the lead, but with anything, we work to collaborate and share information and work together. So either Vision Zero, who is leading up the overall evaluation after this tragic pedestrian fatality, but they would generally be one of the main staff resources to review these types of streets to recommend changes based on what they find.
Can I follow up real quick on that? So it's interesting that you talked about that, because you say that because it seems that it's almost like there's purposely, but purposely makes it sound like it's nefarious, because I don't mean that at all. But 2 or 3 or 5 years ago, in particularly the section of the neighborhood where I live in, the city improved the sidewalks. They made them probably ADA compliant. They improved the types of ramping all around that area, and that's when they put in the high visibility crosswalks. But if it's a partial thoroughfare, and what Anna was talking about is exactly what I've talked about and what we talked about on the phone today, is that nothing stops the traffic. And I guess it's a thoroughfare, whether it should be or not, that's not what I'm trying to debate, but it just seems like we're fighting against two things without actually trying to solve holistically the problem, because there are tons of people that cross, as we know, Clark Street, but it's a thoroughfare, so you put in high-vis sidewalks to encourage people to cross, but have done nothing to, and I say nothing, I do appreciate the little bollards you put right on Chamberlain, but there's very little to encourage drivers to stop. They don't stop. I will tell you, I have to have 3 and 4 cars pass through as I'm trying to cross before the 4th or 5th one will actually stop. And I am standing in the middle of the road, I'm not joking, looking at the car to know that it is, okay, they are actually slowing down. It is safe for me to cross the street. So I don't know what can be done to solve what seems like very conflicting priorities. I don't know. It's frustrating because I know you all are really trying to improve pedestrian safety, and I do think there's so many things that have been fantastic. But again, that just seems like a conflict that's almost been exacerbated by trying to improve pedestrians crossing the street because now it's obvious where people should go, but yet haven't addressed the thoroughfare part of it. And I'm not saying, again, whether it should be a thoroughfare or not. I mean, it probably is for a variety of reasons, but then sort of address ways to allow that conflict to be more harmonious, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with all that. Like, I feel like it's something that we should, we can sort of work on and follow up after we kind of pull together some ideas and information and figure out what the next best step is. Yeah, because it seems like there's obviously kind of a number of different factors at play here. So I don't think it's going to be a super simple solution.
Right.
But yeah, I would say definitely something to work on and sort of figure out how to move that forward. And I would say sort of unfortunately related to that, as one of the emails went out, I think a couple days ago, yesterday, from Oaks and Spokes, mentioned this event and an email for World Day of Remembrance, and from their email it states that there were 5 reported traffic deaths of non-drivers in Raleigh last year. Or let's see, no, it wouldn't have been last year. I think in the last year. So, just kind of as another data point that, how important a lot of these, how important a lot of these programs are and sort of the work that we do here and all of that. Is there any? Yeah.
I'm not familiar at all with how Vision Zero works in the city. I know Mr. Driscoll is the head of that, runs that program. When a fatality takes place like this, there's certain automatic things that take place through Vision Zero, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And so whenever there's a fatality in the city, Sean Driscoll and his team are notified. They are provided the police report and the applicable information, and they lead the evaluation to pull the applicable data for that area and then to gather that history, and then they coordinate throughout the rest of the transportation department and any other applicable departments like the police department or depending on where that is, to recommend changes to ideally eliminate any future fatalities at that
So he's
location.
already working on that.
He's already working on that, yes.
Will that extend to other locations along that corridor, like the intersection on either side? Or?
So we don't have anything to share outside of, there are some immediate actions. I guess the commenter had mentioned about the streetlights. That is something that they've already evaluated and have started as an immediate action where they are looking to upgrade the existing lights. That's one of the best things that the city or any city can do to help minimize and eliminate pedestrian crashes is to improve lighting. So they've already performed an audit and have started working with our partners at Duke to upgrade the intersections of Pogue and Horn. So there is going to be some adjacent review of that. Again, I do not know the extent of that evaluation. They're still pulling data, and we'll start bringing those in throughout the rest of the transportation department in the next 30 days or so.
So I'm assuming that our next meeting will be in January. Will there be something that we can see by January, do you suppose?
I don't know. We'll be happy to provide an update once we have information, but we can't commit to that without knowing that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank Ms. Boone for coming in and sharing the neighborhood perspective. It's really helpful to hear from people who live in a place and have to deal with those conditions all of the time. And I think here on BPAC, we hear a lot of cases like this, specifically like really unique, sometimes unique, but you know, each neighborhood condition has its own specific challenges, and sort of the two, often it reminds me a lot of the Brookside discussion that we had, where you have a lot of pedestrians, but you also have a lot of people using a space as a thoroughfare when it's maybe not supposed to be used quite like that. And I know that as a city, we sort of struggled to respond as quickly and as agilely as I think we wish we could to neighborhood conditions. I would like for sort of, as just to put on staff, not for this year, but for next year, for our January meeting, if part of the active mobility plan discussion could also kind of resurrect our discussion about what a neighborhood program, but maybe some amendment to neighborhood traffic management program could work on adjusting that. I know that we had some discussions, but haven't really been able to make it sort of an actionable or a programmed thing yet. If we could, that could be sort of on our agenda for January. I think that would be really great, and anybody on any commission is welcome to join us for that discussion.
So I guess as we'll be happy to accommodate. I think the best avenue is for you to work with the chair and go into the appropriate committee and discuss what the framework of what you're trying to do is, and then that way staff can react as opposed to us guessing what a program could look like. And then if you can provide that information to what you would like to see, we can try to either connect you to that right resource so that you can know about that and then share that with the public, and or we can share the various policies, and if you find them deficient or insufficient, you as a commission can discuss that and then talk with your council liaison as a potential policy revision.
Could maybe talking with or having sort of a review of the an overview of the neighborhood traffic management program, could that be part of our agenda for planning?
Absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
Would you like that a full or just in a committee meeting?
Whatever, full, please.
Okay. Absolutely.
And if I could add to that, I would also love to see what options we have for different types of lighting in some of these pedestrian intersections. I know it's been brought up a lot. Our street lighting, while it's improving a lot, you know, us being this lovely city of Oaks, we do have some things that obstruct that, and especially, you know, I think this time of year is really tough when it's starting to get dark much earlier and people are adjusting, and it's also a time when people are still very active in the evenings. So I would just love an update on the types of options that we have as a city.
I just had one additional question. Anna, in her comments, had mentioned the idea of being able to have better communication from the city. One thing I remember from a meeting several months ago, Barbara, I think it was we were talking about some type of project that was about to go to public hearing or public comment, and you had asked us who all should, I mean, these are, we have standard lists of who we send information to, but I think you were asking us for additional input on who might that be. And so I do think it might, I'm not sure what the answer is, but it would be helpful, I think, when, and maybe you all are already doing this. I mean, I know you probably reach out to CACs and some of the, Oaks and Spokes and other known entities that pay attention to transportation issues, but it might be helpful to also be able to ensure that homeowners associations, I mean, I know UPA is not, University Park is not an official homeowners association in the traditional sense, but it would be helpful for homeowners associations to also be informed of potential studies that are going on that directly impact, like, for example, streetscapes when you did the Hillsborough Street corridor and the Oberlin corridor. I mean, that was like 10, 15 years ago. I'm not sure how I knew about it, but again, because I'm in that neighborhood, I am paying enough attention so that I could participate in the shreds that you had all around that area. And I was specifically thinking about this one thing that apparently did not come from the city, but it would be helpful to just make sure that if you're going to change the parking, say I'm going to talk about Anderson Drive. I know we've talked about the conflict with the parking versus the bike lanes on Anderson Drive. But like things like that, when there's going to be known changes, instead of just sending letters to affected neighbors, maybe send it to homeowners associations. I'm not sure how that would work. It might be a little bit too burdensome, but maybe there's another way to make sure that neighborhoods are informed of all of the potential changes to transportation in their neighborhood.
No, and we've worked to tackle that a bit within the neighborhood traffic management program, and I'll include how we communicate because it's nearly impossible to know the HOAs and where the HOA lines are, but there's a concerted effort to reach out to the property management firms when it's listed. So we'll be sure to share how we reach out because there's an intent to reach out to those entities.
Right.
But it's difficult if they're not registered with us. But I'll be happy to share that as a glimpse into how we can try to communicate and how we're trying to reach.
Yeah, no, that would be really helpful. And again, UPA, I think, is a great example of them not being an official. It's really just a neighborhood group. Is that fair to say? Registered neighborhood.
Officially registered with the city.
Okay.
And so officially registered neighborhoods, CACs, are a part of our listservs, but the private HOAs are much more difficult to contact.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, yeah, I think a few sort of action items there is that I'll work with staff on the scheduling the presentation or overview of the traffic management program, potentially the January meeting or February. We'll have to figure out the agenda on that, and then I can also work with Ms. Barsness to figure out sort of some of the specifics about what information may or may not have been sent previously, and sort of what the state of play is currently to figure out the next steps. Okay, and so I guess we'll move on to presentations. First one is going to. I don't know. Nope. Our first presentation will be from Campo, the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. They are going to provide an overview of their organization, regional bike and pedestrian planning, and funding for regional projects.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for the invite. I am Jacob Irving, a transportation planner at Campo, or the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. And my colleague, Daniel Sproul, is also here with me. and it will be helping me along with my presentation today. Just to give a little background on what CAMPO is and what an MPO is, metropolitan planning organizations were created in compliance with the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1962 for areas with at least 50,000 person population in order to receive federal funds. And CAMPO across the state is one of 19 MPOs across the state. Sorry. So CAMPO originally comprised of Cary, Raleigh, Garner, and Wake County, and now includes all of Wake County, parts of Franklin, Granville, Harnett, and Johnston, and Chatham counties. And essentially, all of those municipalities help to make up our technical coordinating committee, which is a bunch of staff from NCDOT, the State Department of Transportation, and then municipal staff that are in the transportation realm. And then our executive board is built up of mayors within those municipalities and other officials, including NCDOT highway board members. And that is essentially our governing body. And currently, the CAMPO region's population from 2023 is 1.5 million, which is essentially 13% of North Carolina. And essentially, as an organization, we help to determine regional transportation priorities, and our governing bodies do make crucial decisions in terms of which projects or in terms of transportation projects that you see on the ground in the city of Raleigh and other municipalities within our region. And this is a map of our boundaries to the right. And then on the left side, our boundaries are in the yellow. And our sister MPO, Triangle West TPO, is in the green. And essentially, we partner together to complete our metropolitan transportation plans, which we adopt every 4 years. And I'll touch on that a little later in this presentation. But essentially, the MPO's functions include an establishment of fair and impartial setting. And this is so that projects that have favoritism in any parts or any way don't get unfavorable or, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. They don't get prioritized over other projects that deserve kind of a an opportunity to also be put forward. And then second, we evaluate transportation alternatives in terms of whether or not we're going to focus regionally on highways or particular modes. Over the past few decades, we've determined that focusing on all of the transportation modes, be it transit, bike and pedestrian, and roadways and highways, is the best approach to make sure that people have options in terms of those modes. And three, we maintain our metropolitan transportation plan, which again, we adopt every 4 years. And then that is essentially a regional list of projects that is mentioned in the Transportation Improvement Program. And the Transportation Improvement Program is a part of the STIP, which is the State Transportation Improvement Program. And essentially, through all of these processes, we have the public give their feedback in terms of what they would prefer to see, be it a focus more so on transit or bike and ped improvements. And just to give a quick overview of what an MTP is, essentially it's a long-range transportation plan, and it encompasses 30 years worth of transportation projects of all modes. And we're currently updating our MTP to, So our MTP that we're currently working on is for Destination 2055, which 2055 will be the horizon year or the year we expect to see all of these projects. And essentially, we have 3 decades worth of projects, and they're broken down in 10-year periods. And essentially, we've chosen these projects based on how much money we expect to receive from the federal government or the state. And then in terms of bike and pedestrian projects, they're generally built at the local level or in conjunction with roadway projects. And essentially, the map to your right, the blue and green, is the map regionally of the bike and pedestrian projects that we expect to see by 2055. And just to note, in terms of population growth within our region, we expect the population to double. So just keep that in mind. And essentially, most of those projects are regional or statewide significant. Well, they have regional or statewide significance. And those projects include projects like the Triangle Bikeway, which would connect Raleigh to RTP, and eventually Durham and Chapel Hill. And in terms of funding, I'll hand it off to Daniel Spruill, who will go over more of the funding processes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Daniel Spruill. As Jacob said, I'm the Senior Transportation Planner with the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, focusing in project prioritization and the funding. So just one quick thing on the back slide. When we're talking about regional and statewide significance projects, those are based off some criteria that have been adopted by our executive board. Sidewalks and smaller projects are included. They're just not mapped because that just get a little bit too complicated to map all the sidewalk projects in the region at the scale. So they are included programmatically. They are included, they're just not mapped on there. And that is important because when you're going for federal or state funding, it is required for your bike pedestrian project to be included in the MTP in some level. Okay, so in the landscape of bicycle and pedestrian funding, you really have 4 different areas. 2 of them you're probably very familiar with, your city bond projects and then your developer-funded projects. Those are not really in the wheelhouse of Campo. We're here more to talk about the next 2, the State Transportation Improvement Program and the Locally Administered Projects Program, as well as any other federal funding programs like the Safe Streets for All program and various federal funding programs. And other methods considered funding, or at least to maximize the bang for your buck when it comes to funding, are highway project betterments. When you're having a roadway project, DOT will initiate a project start and a local planner input form. And that will go out to the municipality and Campo, and basically we ask them to adopt by our complete streets policy, which is we look at all these roads and projects and see how we can ensure that there is bike, pedestrian, and ADA and accessibility means being taken into consideration. That will have a little conversation between the county, the city, and the DOT to determine, well, who's going to maintain that, who's going to pay for it. But we're talking about best bang to your buck. Trying to get a project included as one of those roadway projects means you're only bidding for contract once, all your right-of-way is all being done at the same time. It's just more efficient with your funding. Another method I want to consider is the Weight Transit Program. Now, that is a program that is funded through a half-cent sales tax, as well as several other taxes in the county for transit items. However, a use of that is the bicycle pedestrian facilities with a logical nexus to transit projects. That is your ADA and accessibility to and from transit stops. So that is something you also may want to consider as a way to incrementally build out your bike pedestrian network. Okay, so there's a lot of text on this one. So for the State and Transportation Improvement Program and the TIP, this is probably one of the core documents of an MPO and what we do. It is the main source of funding for transportation funding for state and federal funds in all modes. That is roadway, bike, pedestrian, aviation, transit, rail, and ferry. Not that we have any ferry in this area. It is a 10-year fiscally constrained document, so everything in there means that they know how they're going to fund it based on funding projections. It is a year-by-year line item, so it shows every project, every year, and what activity is going to be done on that project. The first 5 years are considered committed, so if that project is in that first 5 years, it's pretty much guaranteed it's going to be funded. And in fact, DOT will, if you have a project in the first 5 years, DOT is happy to make an agreement with a city to, if the city wants to go ahead and build that project, then DOT will commit to paying them back. If they want to go ahead and get the project done, DOT will commit to reimbursing them once it comes into the STIP. That way you can advance the project forward, but still have your town, city budgets being still fiscally constrained. The STIP and TIP are updated every 2 years through a process called the Strategic Prioritization Transportation, the SPOT process. We are currently in P8. That came out of the STI legislation, the Strategic Transportation Investment legislation from 2013. That's North Carolina General Statute, Chapter 136, Article 14B. All projects are submitted by NCDOT and divisions, and that is for, again, all modes of transportation, be it roadway or bike pedestrian. And for this area, Campo is going to be your project submitter. We have 48 submittals per mode, so 48 bike pedestrian projects, 48 roadway projects. Every cycle, we open a call for projects for bike pedestrian and transit at the beginning of SPOT. So that is every 2 years. So we had that one earlier this year, and the next one will be around June to July in 2027. And I want to bring that attention because we really rely on our municipal partners to submit projects for us to create. We don't develop or decide what these projects are. We are just taking the projects from our municipalities. And there is a defined window that we have. So it really helps if the cities know what projects they want to bring to us by the time we get to the actual call for projects. The eligible entities to submit that are your municipalities and counties. While we really appreciate our local groups and advocacy groups asking for projects, unless it is a request from a municipality, we cannot entertain it. That goes back to the MTP being a source document. Any project being submitted in SPOT also needs to be in the MTP. That is why we try to do extensive coordination with our municipalities in the development of these core documents early on. And another eligibility trigger is all eligible projects must include a commitment letter from the municipality or the county that they are going to provide a minimum of 20% of the total project costs. And that 20% is set in stone. That is legislation. That is because even in the state budget, the state's budget doesn't actually use any of the state money for bike pedestrian projects. It is all federal money under the hood. And because of that, it is subject to the federal 80-20% rule. Another program is the Locally Administered Projects Program. Now, this is using the Campo's direct attributable funding that is coming from the Surface Transportation Block Grant, the TAP, the CMAC, a lot of different acronyms. And that goes to population, MPOs with a population of 200,000 or more. TMA is what it's called, a traffic mitigation area. Campo currently is getting $25 million a year for this program. And our executive board has broken down that funding into the bucket shown here, which is our middle mix. That is $16.25 million for roadway, $6.75 million for bike pedestrian, and $2 million for transit. And that is a target. That does not always mean that is what happens. For instance, in this most recent one, we didn't have any transit projects, so we just increased the funding in the other areas. It is a competitive project, and one of those items that is competing, one of the criteria, is safety. It is also going to be how many areas, how many people are disadvantaged communities in that area, and various different items that are we are required to recognize through federal law. Municipalities, counties, transit agencies, and DOT are the applicable submitters for the LAP. And again, since this is federal funding, it also applies that 20% non-federal match. And that non-federal match can be from the city. It could also be from a developer fee in lieu or anything that is not federal. And now I want to talk about some future funding that we don't have yet, but we are looking at expecting. So this is the new regional local revenue options that is planned for adoption on Wednesday. So you may have heard that Charlotte recently passed a referendum on transportation. That is a general transportation. I think it's a 1 cent in Charlotte, but that has actually been on our plans for many years. That comes out of the NC First Commission over a decade ago. And it plans for a 1 cent sales tax for general transportation regions. That is planned to be adopted, and again, that is just adopted for our financial model. We are expecting that with the success of the Charlotte referendum, that is going to continue throughout the rest of the state. That Charlotte is often used for a pilot for these type of programs. So now that that has passed, you're going to see a lot of pushing from our local municipalities in the Campo region to actually move that into the more federal state and using the weight transit tax as a kind of a template for how that works. Under that program, the executive board has recommended an option for how that money would be split. And for that money, which is a 1 cent sales tax for Wake County, that would generate about $6.89 billion over the next 30 years. The breakdown of funding that they are recommending to use that is 40% complete street capacity and safety projects, 40%, which is $2.7 billion. 15% operation and maintenance, that's $1 billion. Road system operations, 5%, that is your TSMO, your traffic system mitigation, traffic signal systems, and like that. 10% would be transit, which is $689 million. This is on top of the current Wake Transit plan. That's why transit has a little bit less of this pie, because that would just be in addition to the existing transit tax. And then 30%, or $2.069 billion for bike pedestrian in this region over the next 30 years. We want to bring this up because this is what our financial models are expecting. This also expects this not to take into effect until 2036. With the adoption of the Charlottes, it is very possible that the desire and push for this could happen sooner. But that is where it exists in the model, 2036 to 2055. So just 20 years of the tax would generate that $6.9 billion for transportation in this region. That's all I have in funding. I think Jacob's going to close this out, and I'm here to answer any questions related to the funding aspect.
And in terms of the points he just mentioned, as an organization, we cannot lobby necessarily for that kind of funding. But as a body within a municipality, you guys can help support that if that's what you feel is needed to make our transportation systems throughout the region, of course, in the city, safer. So it's up to you guys as staff and as an organization. We can't necessarily say, oh, well, we can't lobby to get that realized. But essentially, my last few points are that our purpose for this presentation was to help build a connection between Campo staff and BPAC to help better the public's understanding of how Campo helps to influence transportation decisions. And so they can understand the difference between what the municipality has control over versus what the regional leaders have control over. So then there's better understanding of who to advocate for and where. So then if there are issues in terms of safety, they can they can not only mention it to local leaders within the municipality of which they live, but also regional leaders so that safety and other issues are included and considered regionally. And mentioning that, we do have a Blueprint for Safety Summit, which is essentially our regional Vision Zero plan, which we just adopted, I want to say earlier this year. And our summit is going to be December 3rd, and we are our registration for that event actually ends on Wednesday. And I will, if you guys are interested, share that registration link with you all. Safety is a big priority for Campo, and we hope that our plan essentially gets realized to where we're not seeing as many fatalities or serious injury crashes throughout the region. And that's all that I have. Does anybody have any questions? I know we're going over time.
Thank you. Yeah, that's, thank you for the presentation. There's obviously a lot of good information in there. I had a few questions myself. So for the STI, for the, well, I guess not the STI, the Campo, I guess the tip, not the state. The 48 submittals per mode under Campo, so that's Campo is doling out those funds. Am I understanding that correctly? And
so the funds are the state and federal funds that are controlled in the STIP and the STI legislation. The STI legislation was adopted in 2013 to kind of take this from being a qualitative back of the shop handshake deal into a quantitative based data driven system. The 48 submittals are based off of population. So Campo has based on population, it's one submittal for every 50,000, and then there's a base number. The number comes out to be 48. The DOT division, they also have 14 submittals per mode, but they generally stick to highway and rail. They are not going to solicit bike pedestrian projects. They can submit them, and Campo often submits, asks them to submit projects for us. That's why we do a call for projects, and if we receive more than 48, we go to our division partners and say, can you submit these for us?
okay, so these are actually the opposite of what I was thinking. These are, Campo is submitting projects into the STIP program.
Correct.
Not receiving funds out of. Okay. And so, okay, I guess that doesn't, my actual question was, is the 48, is that sort of defined by statute? It sounds like it is, right?
Yes, the 48 is defined, well, I would need to read the exact language of the STI legislation. There is language on how the submittals are calculated, but I don't know if the actual formula is there, or just ask the STIP work group to develop it for them.
Okay. And so are there requirements or minimal requirements to sort of make a project eligible to be submitted to STIP? Like, I mean, without getting into like specifics, like assuming there's a project that the city of Raleigh believes in and wants, you know, and is sort of a real project, is there any sort of minimal requirements that a project would not be accepted into the program?
The only minimal qualification you have to do is actually project cost, and that is a minimum of $100,000, which in this day and age is very easy to meet. I don't think we have ever had a project have an issue with that cost.
Yeah, I mean, that seems a little backwards. Like, we can always inflate costs if we like.
That is another thing. Well, because it is a quantitative system, and it's also important to note that didn't go in here, but I can. There are different tiers of STI projects. You have your statewide, your regional, and then your division level tiers. Mm-hmm. By the STI legislation, bike pedestrian projects all fall under the division level. So in the division level, your projects are scored 50-50 on a quantitative and a qualitative system. So the quantitative is based off of people that live in a buffer around it. How many jobs, how many areas like schools. DNC DOT uses the TDI, Transportation Disadvantage Index. It uses items like that. Safety, how many crashes have been in the area in the past 10 years, I believe is the quantitative they use. Then on the qualitative side is what we call the local input points. So after DOT scores a project, then it comes out to MPOs and the divisions and says, okay, what is the priority for the division and MPO on this project? And we have 100 points that we can put on a project, and that makes up the other 50% of the score. And that is another item that the local municipalities and counties will have as an input on your project priorities. So for instance, we won't be doing this next, for division, it'll be next fall. We will be coming out to our municipalities and with the project list of all the priorities for bike pedestrian and all the division level projects. And we have a set number of points, and we'll ask for recommendations for, well, we'll have a recommendation on projects where you're getting the points. And that informs that 50%. And we work with the municipalities, Kenneth Ritchie and Bradley Kimbrell with the city to develop that, that recommendation.
They do have a limit, right?
So, okay, so, that is for, the process you're describing is for basically picking projects out of, to get prioritized in the STIP list,
Yes.
right?
So there's only a limited amount of money in the STIP process. It is a competitive process. So what we do is we look at all the projects and we try to find the best ones that we can put points on that will raise them into the actual funded pool of the STIP. We use an adopted methodology that is about minimizing wasted effort. If we have a project that doesn't score well enough on the quantitative side to be competitive to get in the funding, even if we put all of our points on it, we want to recommend another way to do that. Maybe going through the LAP program, going through another federal grant program. That might not be the best opportunity for the STIP. So we work closely with the city on making those judgment calls and moving projects to one funding source or the other.
Okay, and so on the sales tax program, in a future program, I should say, or a theoretical program, how is it envisioned that those funds would be distributed? Is this going to be some type of like formula funding where it just goes out on population? Is there going to be a competitive bid process? Is there going to, or not bid, but a competitive process? Like how do these dollars, how is it envisioned that these dollars will be distributed between the municipalities in Wake County?
Yeah, so it is hard to say for sure because this is a future program, but the way we kind of envision it would be something similar to the Wake Transit program, where we have a set-aside group that is made up of representatives from all the municipalities. For that, we have TPAC, the Transit Partners. I don't remember the acronym. The TPAC that makes those decisions on the Wake Transit plan and the work plan program for them, and it would be similar to that. So it would be kind of a programming competitive listing of projects. Campo tries to avoid doling out based on population or stuff like that. That is how we have done things in the past. That's how the LAP program used to be up into 2012 when we faced a federal decision, and that meant the region lost over $50 million in funding because of that methodology. That is why we changed it to a competitive format in order to protect funding and protect projects from any future rescissions. So it would be under a competitive programming that would be informed by a technical group of our municipalities.
Okay. Does anyone else have? Yes.
So I'm wondering how we could approach system-wide deficiencies, specifically APS availability. Last time I looked, the statewide coverage of accessible pedestrian signals was like 11%, and the state runs or owns a lot of the intersections in the city, and there are hundreds of intersections, signalized intersections in the city that don't have accessible pedestrian signals, including places like crosswalks over 440, or anywhere along the belt line. Is it possible for the city or the state or some combination to do a system project where they're not dealing with a particular corridor? It wouldn't show up on a map as a straight line. It would be a series of dots,
Yes.
throughout the system.
So, yes.
You know, that kind of thing, it turns out when you look at it in terms of a corridor, you miss everything outside of the corridor. And so that is the one part of the system that in the last 20 years just has not kept up with refit for ADA compliant.
Yeah, so there are several ways that can happen. In the STIP and the spot process, that is going to be under the category of project that is called a citywide signal system project. And that is a blanket, all the signals in that city are upgraded. The most recent projects that we have submitted that are the town of Wendell, the NCDOT non-municipal city signal system, so all the signals that aren't in a municipality. Cary's has their funded, Holly Springs has their funded. It's been a couple years since Raleigh's had one funded, but they have had one in the past. And that's just under that program. You also have things like the Safe Streets for All program, that is a federal funding program. And that is what the Blueprint for Safety plan that my colleague mentioned aims to fund. So under that federal program, you have a list of projects that are listed in the Blueprint for Safety. And then with that, you can go after a group project under the Safe Street for All program as well. So there are many actual opportunities to do that.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next presentation. Will be the micromobility program update.
Hello, Hannah DeSantos, transportation staff. So I'm going to be providing just a brief snapshot update on the dockless pilot that launched in August. So we'll start off, we're about 3 months into this pilot and launched August 18th, 2025. We have, just in the first 14 days, we had about over 3,500 trips. And if we compare the number of trips we had in August 2025 to August 2024, even with just 14 days of trips, there was an 106% increase in number of trips that occurred. So we've been really happy with the level of ridership and engagement that we've seen since launch. And if we look at the ridership numbers between August and November 2024, and we compare it with August and November 2025, we've seen an 180% increase in total number of bike trips. The November data isn't complete yet because we still have a few days remaining. And if we look at the details of the month breakdown, in September, the increase was 231%. In October is 242%. And so if we continue trending that way, it's likely that the end of November will be even more than 180%. And some next steps for the program. So as you know, Glenwood South Corral upgrades in the spring. We had 72% parking compliance post-pilot. And there's going to be expansion of micromobility parking across downtown. So in August, we launched a call for artists. It closed in October. We've already selected the 7 artists, and so that project is underway, and the painting of that will be completed summer 2026. So there will be more than 70 locations across downtown that are going to have painted corrals. And another takeaway is, so as you know, we've shifted from C-Click-Fix to ServiceNow. And in September, we had, up until today, actually, since September, we've had 70 reports come through ServiceNow. But in September alone, we had more than 130 operator-issued warnings for improperly parked scooters. So we know that the operators are definitely issuing more warnings to riders than people are reporting. And that's the conclusion of the snapshot. If you have any questions or concerns, this is the email to share with folks to be in touch with our team.
Okay, thank you. Just clarification on the ridership comparison. That's just the previous docked.
Yep.
Bikes.
Doesn't include scooters.
No, okay, so it's just
Yeah, this is just
the previous docked versus dockless bikes. Okay, and then the companies issuing the warnings, like what does that how does that look like? Is that they issue a warning to their users, and if sort of repeat offenders effectively get kicked off the platform, or what? How does that look?
Yeah, so basically, we're the only city in North Carolina that has a citywide parking policy. And how the policy works is you get 2 warnings, and then you get fined $15, and then you get fined another $15. And if you get a 5th violation infraction, then your account gets submitted for review. And you can be permanently kicked off the platform. Statistically, operators find that once they issue a warning that the person is going to get fined, even though it's a $15 fine, it tends to dissuade people of, they don't want to get kicked off the platform and they don't want to get the $15 fine. And that's why there's 2 warnings, because the intention is not to get people to not use scooters or not use bikes, but it's to correct improper behavior.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I definitely will be interested to see more about the sort of expanding the corral program and stuff like that. I brought this up a few months ago whenever we were talking about the agenda. So like, that's something that I'm sort of interested in to see. I feel like that will, as the program grows, I think that feels like it helps helps sort of on both sides, where it helps keep the bikes from sort of being left random places, as well as helps potential users sort of have a mental model of like where they can just intuitively walk to, and there likely will be a bike in that direction, even if they don't have to like open up the app and, track one down. So, I'd definitely be interested to see how that rolls out. Is there any other comments or questions, Mr. Gallagher?
Just wondering if the city had any data on kind of like a heat map or hotspots of where trips go to. I think it could be helpful and informative relaying that information back to the transportation department to show where there is the greatest area of need and potentially addressing that in terms of infrastructure.
That's a great point. And we do have a website that I'm happy to share with you. It's public facing, and so it's a heat map all across the city. So anybody who's interested in knowing like where people are riding, the heat map shows you that data. And so happy to provide that. We have a contract that basically we want to know where people are riding. And so we've created a live map that's public facing. So I'm happy to share that with you, with the commission, yeah.
Taylor.
Thank you so much for the update. It's exciting that ridership is increasing so much. And also really great to hear that you guys are working through sort of like these corral points and locations, because I know that had been sort of a question when we lost the docks, like where would bikes and scooters park, and or where would you find them? I think my only sort of minor follow-up to that was, are some of those docking locations, like previous docking locations, becoming new corrals?
Yeah.
Cool.
So we're basically using data from where people used to park previously, and then overlaying that with parking heat data that we do have access to from like the scooter program, and bringing all of that data together with where we are allowed and aren't allowed to repurpose street space to identify the corral locations.
Awesome. Very exciting. Thank you.
And just a quick follow-up on the corrals. Do you have any kind of way to measure the impact that that's had on pedestrian safety as well? Because just anecdotally walking around, they make it feel much more safe as a pedestrian, because they're brightly colored, they're barriers. It's a really nice feature to have in the city.
It's a great question in terms of the data that we can collect moving forward. We know that daylighting statistically does make intersections safer, and so I don't have data today to sort of prove that case, but I know when we look at what the role of daylighting on a national level, we know that it has that function of making it safer. So we know that that's the effect, but we haven't measured it specifically on the corrals on Glenwood, but that's definitely something with expansion we can think about. What can pre and post data measurement look like from a safety perspective?
So I appreciate the presentation, and I'm glad to see the city's getting such good feedback from the system. I do have some anecdotal things to say. I sent you, Ms. DeSantos and Ms. Godwin, some photos that I took on a couple of walks that I had. One was on Person Street. That was the first one I think I sent you. And I walked from Davie to almost where Blunt and Person merge. And I saw 9 scooters in groups in 3 different places along that walk. This was October 14th, I think it was. And they were obviously they were in the sidewalk, they were flipped over on their side, and they were obviously not left there by riders. They were obviously somebody pulled up in a van and unloaded them onto the sidewalk and drove off. And then the following day, on October 15th, was White Cane Day, and we marched from the Legislative Building to Art Space, and we came down Blunt Street, and I was in front of the procession of 50 blind people moving scooters out of the way the whole way. I moved at least 4 or 5 scooters out of the way, and there were others that weren't so bad that I didn't feel like I needed to move everything. And then the 20th of October, I walked from the McKimmon Center to the Village District, the center of the Village District, down Clark Avenue, down Western Boulevard, and I came across 4 or 5 scooters. 3 of them were on their sides in the middle of the sidewalk, and the other one was standing straight up in the middle of the sidewalk. So there's obviously, this was the only 3 long walks I took in Raleigh, and all 3 of them I had scooters. That's not a problem for me personally because I have a fair amount of eyesight, but I spent a lot of time in October with a lot of people in the blind community, and that is a common problem for people with low vision or no vision. These scooters are a real problem. And to whatever degree the system is solving that problem, it's not yet completing it. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to let you know.
No, I appreciate that. Currently, we're working with the name changed recently, the Mayor Commission for Persons with Disabilities. And so we are working on an education campaign with the ADA coordinator because we recognize that there is an opportunity to improve the public education around that. And so that's a campaign that we are working on right now. And it's part of the reason why we also are trying to move corrals in street with the expansion of corrals, because we are trying to move away from people parking on sidewalks and in street. The most helpful thing, I think, when folks see things around the city is to contact us. So the Ask Raleigh, it's really helpful when you email because we're able to understand areas of the city or add things to our data of where we're seeing consistently things are happening. And so we have some other projects in the back end to just find ways to group that data, more streamline it as we look into the future of the program. Where do we have hotspot of problems that are happening? But we're certainly working with the ADA coordinator and trying to push out more education. And then also as we look ahead into the future of the program, thinking about how can we lower the instances of people parking improperly. And so we really encourage folks when they see things parked improperly around the city, either to report through Ask Raleigh, and if that doesn't work, just email us directly and we can coordinate with the operators.
So if the vendor leaves the scooters in the wrong place, it's not going to generate any kind of report or anything. They're not going to report themselves for parking in the wrong place. I was just wondering how that's addressed.
Yeah.
These were obviously not left by customers. They were left by the vendor.
the operators are aware of what the rules are around where they can and can't park. And so if there are issues of operators not parking correctly, then that's something that we can address. But they do station the scooters in a specific way so you can see when it was put by an operator versus when it was put by riders. It's not uncommon on weekends for people to go on group rides and you'll see several scooters and it might look really neat and it looks like it's an operator, but it's actually a group of folks that rode together and wanted to make it look neat when they ended their ride. But operators know the rules and they know there's also penalties if they're not complying. And so that's something I'm happy to keep an eye out for. But from when we see scooters parked by operators, I've not seen, they understand the rules and they know that this is a permit situation. So they understand that they're supposed to meet those requirements. So if there are issues of infractions that you're seeing, I know you sent an email with pictures that you'd seen. That information is helpful so we can correct that behavior.
And one thing to add, Mr. Santos touched the Ask Raleigh. That's one of the best tools. Want to continue to amplify that, because if you can send that picture with the location, the operators can trace that back to who rode that, and then it triggers the warning situation. So emailing pictures to Ms. Godwin, Mr. Santos is helpful.
Yep.
But we don't necessarily know exactly where you were, when that was, and it's harder. So you can do both, but Ask Raleigh, please share that around. That is one of the best things that you as residents can do to help us help you in this effort to really organize a dockless system.
And just to build on that, if for whatever reason you're like, I don't have time to do Ask Raleigh, just email me. As long as you see it and you email, I can see where the scooter is. But if you see it and then you email me 5 hours later, people move scooters. Like these scooters, they're seeing a lot of trips, and the bikes as well daily. And so sometimes people will file a report and then the operator will go out and they'll say, hey, the scooter isn't there anymore. And it's happening often enough that I'm like, the moment somebody sees something, email me or make the Ask Raleigh request right away, because operators sometimes get to it within 10 minutes. And then if the scooter's not there 5 hours later, it's likely because it was moved by another rider.
I get a question about Ask Raleigh. Can you expand on what it's used for? Is it just for the scooter program, or is it a more general?
It's a great question. I can speak to how we're using it in the program. I don't know if Barbara or Will want to chime in to how it's being used in other ways, but I know that for the scooter program, we're using it to make sure that operators are meeting their requirement of addressing improperly parked scooters.
Yeah, so Ask Raleigh replaced the C-Click Fix software that was used by the city for a long time. It's used for a number of requests across the entire city, so not just transportation and mobility, but Raleigh Water, the planning department, and just all, across the city.
And what exactly can citizens use it for?
You can make a request based on an issue or a concern you have, regarding like a sidewalk that needs to be maintained, or a scooter that's improperly parked, or if there's a public nuisance situation happening. It's really anything that you see out in the city that needs to be alerted to city staff, and then it'll get filtered to the appropriate staff member to resolve.
I've used it multiple times for signs that have been ripped up out of the street.
Interesting. So could someone use that for when they're trying to cross a pedestrian crosswalk and there are cars that are whizzing by, ignoring the fact that someone's in a crosswalk? And the reason I say that is after Anna Boone provided public comments, I was talking with him for a little while after, and one of the other people actually specifically asked that question. He said, I would really like to be able to have a way to let the city know when someone is violating the crosswalk laws, if you will. Okay, thank you so much.
If you have any questions if you go to the Ask Raleigh website and there isn't a button for what you want to report, you can always email and ask, is there a button for this, or what would be the best way for me to communicate this? And it'll get shifted to whichever department is best suited to answer the question.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for the presentation. Just for my own education, in the eyes of the city, are the scooters and the bikes relatively interchangeable in terms of the laws and policies they have to follow and their purpose?
Yeah, the laws are interchangeable in the sense that bikes are not supposed to block the crosswalks or the bike path or the sidewalk, and so scooters and bikes are the expectation of people who are riding both scooters and bikes is that they're parking in ways that don't impede pedestrian access. So I would say in that way, the expectations are the same.
And these corrals are going to be for both?
Yeah, they will be for both. Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to the micro-mobility parking that's planned around Dix Park, particularly Lake Wheeler Road, and the improvements there, and how we plan to deal with what I anticipate to be a very large number of scooters and bikes there?
It's a good question, and I think I'll have to go back with the team to think through the Lake Wheeler Road question in specific. But I know Dix Park, we're currently running a pilot there right now with this shared micromobility program, and we have, for the pilot, we've had several corrals set up across the Dix Park that are geofenced, and it's the first time we've had geofenced corrals at Dix Park. The ridership has been really healthy, and I'm happy to share more numbers around the Dix Park pilot moving forward, and I think that will be a good sort of case study for what we can do in that area. But based on the level of ridership that we've been seeing, that people are how people are using Dix Park since the pilot does demonstrate that there's a lot of appetite for riding in that area. And so I would say we should use that as the case study for thinking more broadly about Lake Wheeler.
And we do regularly, I know that Hannah meets with the operation manager for the Dix Park. We meet with them. We had lunch with that individual last week to talk about overall transportation plans, parking plans, and even he brought up with the completion of the Lake Wheeler Road that they're already thinking about how they can manage pedestrian and cyclists and scooter plans to bring those folks in and also park them efficiently and effectively.
Can you speak a little bit to the differences that you're seeing between the very visible bike and scooter corrals versus the geofencing that you're doing at Dix Park, and kind of the usership and, any frustrations that come out of geofencing versus the more visible
Yeah,
ones?
certainly. Certainly, the more visual cues you have, it's similar to the street. The more visual cues you have on a road about what the rules of the road are, the better compliance. And so with the corrals on Glenwood, I think there's probably less what we call rider friction when people are trying to park at the corrals. And so the number of trips at the park has been really high, and the number of parking events, I think, will be even higher once we have the clarifying signage. And so that's actually something we're working on for the next stage of the pilot. It won't be geofences forever. It's just geofences to figure out what are the zones that people are using most. And then once we figure out what those zones are, then working on signage to make it more visibly clear. The best practice is have as many visual cues as you can. And so geofences is sort of that intermediary step of figuring out where is their demand. And so I would say we definitely see more parking events at Glenwood, on Glenwood right now, where you have all of the visual cues. But I'm anticipating as we add those elements to Dix Park, we will see a similarly trend there.
And just one quick follow-up to that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Is there any data that you guys get from the vendors about people attempting to park and being told, oh, no, you can't park here, move, to see kind of the statistical significance of those geofencing areas?
Yeah, so we have asked, that is something that the operators, that we're working with them on the pilot, and so they've adjusted some of the radiuses of the virtual geofences where they noticed people were trying to park and couldn't park, and we actually moved some geofences when we noticed people keep trying to park here, but the geofence was like slightly like over there. And so in terms of specific numbers, I don't have, but I know that that specific point has been a part of our conversations of trying to match where we put corrals to where riders are actually trying to end their rides.
Okay. If no one else has anything, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the report section. The chair's report. I don't really have a specific report. I'll just sort of as an informational item. The active mobility plan and downtown mobility plan should be going back to council tomorrow, hopefully for approval. I watched the work session from a month ago, and staff gave a very thorough and great presentation. I think there was certainly a pretty overwhelming support from City Council. So, in my personal estimation, I don't think there'll be any real issue with approval, but if anybody wants to sort of send any notes or anybody to your favorite counselor, feel free to do so.
Staff a question on that topic.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I took a sneak peek at the council agenda for tomorrow, and it looked like they had requested some rough budget numbers on the so-called big jump element of the active mobility plan. Are you prepared to present that tomorrow? And okay, because that's something I'm interested in seeing going forward. So that's something we might all tune into for information as well. So, okay, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, and just for those not aware, so the big jump is like the sort of 5-year hit the ground running type of thing. Like, here's sort of a slightly ambitious program, but like a reasonable one to what can happen in the next 5 years after adoption. I think it was 5 miles of sidewalk and 50 miles of improved bikeways or something to that order. But yeah, I think the main sort of commentary I saw from council was just kind of getting an idea of the financial impact and sort of what that looks like and how to fund it and all of that. I think it was more of a question of sort of the mechanics of that, not if or if not it should happen. It's more of how, which is encouraging. So that is sort of the main thing. I will say, as part of that, I did, Paul Callum from Transportation made a comment that I actually saw fruits of out in my neighborhood last week. He mentioned that the city has done, I think he said, around 60 projects for the sidewalk microgap project over the last two months. At that point, 2 months, so 3 months ago. And I had just noticed that there was a small gap filled near my house off of Spring Forest a week or two ago, where there was a maybe 20-foot, 30-foot gap between these huge long sections that kind of wiggled around a big utility pole that had been cut off for forever, and that just finally got built. So there's that, and and apparently 59 other projects have happened, spread across the city. So that's obviously great to see that the city is sort of able to make those, very critical, those kind of small tactical fixes, but obviously very, very impactful improvements as well. And then another sort of related thing is that I did notice that at the intersection of New Hope and Lewisburg, NCDOT has now finally striped the crosswalks and installed the pedestrian signals at that intersection. So just as a sort of has became a pet project of mine. Very unfortunately many years in the making, but is very good to see that has now finally happened, and also I guess one final thing is that our friends in the transit department, there's been since we've last met, there's been a handful of enhancements to the Go Raleigh service. The primary one being that the Route 1, the Capitol Boulevard route, is now runs at a 10-minute frequency all day and 15 minutes on the weekend. So that's the first 10-minute level frequency in Raleigh. So all of that to say, just a lot of good things have been happening recently. There's obviously a lot more work to do, but I think it's good to just sort of take a second and acknowledge a lot of the projects that have been happening recently and things moving in the right direction. So with that, we'll go through the committees. All three committees have no outstanding items, so I assume there won't be really any reports. So none from planning and none from outreach. And we will go to staff reports, if staff has a report.
No report from me.
No report.
Okay. And moving right along to general board comments. Yes.
So on October 3rd, at a little after 1 o'clock, I was hit by a car walking home from North Hills on Six Forks Road, crossing Northbrook Drive. I had the light, and a driver was taking a right turn on red and bumped into me. I was not seriously injured. I reported this to folks at Raleigh Transportation, but I did not call the police. I did not do a police report. I have had second thoughts about that several times, but at the time, it felt like I was going to be there for an hour, and I just, probably should have done it, but I didn't. This person was taking a right turn on red, and I guess my takeaway from that is maybe we should rethink right on red in general, but especially in specific areas. And Northbrook Drive is definitely a place where I think I've walked there several times since then, and I'm a lot more careful, but people still pull out into the crosswalk and are looking left and not towards people entering the crosswalk from the right side. The other thing I had was I just wanted to report that we did White Cane Day on October 15th, and we had about 75 people there, including a good turnout from the city of Raleigh, and we really appreciate that. This was a North Carolina Council of the Blind event. And I just anecdotally, I reached out in the process of organizing this event to the North Carolina Department of Transportation, and I spoke to a couple of people, and we marched by the transportation building on Wilmington Street, and we stopped and made a little noise there. And I talked to them and asked them if they would come out and acknowledge us. You know, we're not, it's a rally, it's not a demonstration. It was a little bit like Groundhog's Day. We weren't sure whether they were going to come out and see their shadow, and we have 6 more years of whatever. But the Department of Transportation did not participate at all, which was really disappointing. And I just wanted to let everybody know that. The last thing I have is I have a pet project too, and you are very well aware of it, and that's the Six Forks crossing of 440. The crosswalks on the east side of Six Forks over those ramps. Is there any news on that? I haven't seen. I've been through that intersection a couple of times, and I haven't noticed anything.
No, the update that we have been made is that the NCDOT is approving or moving forward with the widening of that off ramp, and that will include the construction or reconfiguring of the crosswalk.
Oh, I didn't realize they were widening it.
Yeah, it's actively under construction. Yeah, it should probably be done in a couple months, it seems like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Do you happen to know, will they implement a turn restriction there? Do you happen to know? Will there be like no right on red once that's done, or?
No, I'm not aware.
Okay.
Well, technically, there is no right on red there because there are 2 right turn lanes, and there's no right turn where there are 2 right turn lanes. So technically, I mean, this is what I was told. You can't put a no right turn on red sign there because it's already indicated by 2 right turn lanes. So
Glenwood has it.
this is what I was told.
No,
that it's not in the MUTCD to do that. And I mean, I know you can get an exemption if you make the case, but
okay.
I don't know if that's happening.
Yeah, I was just sort of wondering if it will get a similar treatment to how the off-ramp at Glenwood is, where there's no right on red there. I mean, like it's still going to be fairly hostile to pedestrian traffic, but at least
I just
legally,
don't want to
like
cede the territory. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I know it's going to be confrontational, but I don't want to cede the territory. That territory, that area belongs to pedestrians.
Right.
And I want it to be marked as such.
Right. Yeah.
Whether or not people choose to respect the markings or the law or whatever is a different matter. But as long as there's no markings or signs there, you can't really even make that case. You know,
Right.
It has to be marked. It has to have signs. It has to have extra visibility and all that stuff because it's pretty bad.
Right. Yeah, I'm just thinking like if it gets a similar treatment to Glenwood, then ideally like at least cars won't be actively turning through the crosswalk while they have a red light. I mean, whether or not drivers actually adhere to that is a different question, but you know, technically at least. But yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, it's certainly actively under construction. I went past a few days ago. So, I mean, if nothing else, we should know in a couple months if there's going to be a crosswalk painted or not. So I guess that's something to keep an eye on.
I'll just add it to the several months I've already kept an eye on it.
Yeah.
Do we know in their plans, are there plans for sidewalk or crosswalk as a part of this?
Yes, that's always been the
infrastructure update?
plans. The issue originally why we couldn't mark it, even though that there were the ramps, is that the stop bars were too far up, and they conflicted with where the crosswalk would be after the original handicap ramps were upgraded. We've been working with the DOT to revise those signal plans, but since then, the redevelopment came and moved up to move construction, so it's been a lot of moving pieces. So the intent was always to mark that with in the short term and the longer term, making these more impactful marking improvements. But again, it's been a journey to get here, but now that's under construction. That is part of the final expected outcome and plan.
Hi, more out of my curiosity, but I don't know if y'all have been over to Dix Park to see the trolls, but Dix Park is now like totally insane. And my friends have commented to me who've come like there are not enough sidewalks, there's not enough crosswalks, and just some deep concern about how busy it's gotten. And sort of a lack of good infrastructure, and people cross all over the place to get to see the trolls. And luckily, cars are driving very slowly, but I was just wondering the status of kind of a collaboration between, I don't know if it's the city or the Conservancy or the other players to like improve or watch out for pedestrian safety in the park.
We can take that back and work with our partners in the Dix Park. With that, Dix Park is private property, so there's minimal to no public streets cutting through that. So that being said, you know, we talk with their operations and management team and consult and help with parking plans and circulation plans. So that can absolutely be something that we continue to discuss with them and highlight this observation to make sure that they're aware as well.
Got a quick question for you guys, hopefully quick. So I live in the Glenwood South area and have noticed and finally saw a QR code for it, the Glenwood South Safety Pilot that's happening. I've noticed it most prominently at Glenwood and Johnson. I'm just curious kind of what future plans are for their like the bollards up right now, keeping traffic, if those are going to stay, and if they are, if there's any way at those crosswalks to lengthen the green time, because there are a lot of large trucks that come through there for deliveries to the restaurants and grocery down the street, and when they come back and they're trying to turn where everything's blocked off, it's making it very slow for them to turn, so it essentially uses up the whole crosswalk time for one truck to turn.
So this is a pilot. Mm-hmm. You know, the intent, City Council directed staff to go do a number of different intersection interventions and then to gather data. So that's very good feedback. This is not necessarily the final iteration. This is just the first implementation, and it's meant to be a tactile, a quick build, tactile urbanism type approach to see what works to give pedestrians more space to queue as well as shorter crossing time. So certainly we can take a look at that. We are in the process of gathering data to understand how this change impacts it. And with that, because it is a temporary, I mean, it's not temporary that we're going to remove it, but it's temporary in the materials that we're using. This helps inform future streetscape improvements or future bond projects that could be discussed for this area. Again, it's really about gathering the data to understand what's working, what's not, and trying to improve the pedestrian element on a street that's one of our pedestrian priority corridors. But we can absolutely talk with our partners in the signals.
Thanks. And I think, like, you know, the thought of the right turn on red issue, even when you're telling folks in their signs saying not to do it, you still have people that do it. And having that barrier definitely is helping, I think, keep pedestrians safer. I think there's just some interesting unintended consequences probably happening as well.
Okay. Any other comments?
Did you already talk about Big Branch Greenway?
I did not.
Okay.
Do you want to?
I just want to mention that that's going before council tomorrow as well. And the segment 1B of Big Branch, the proposed Big Branch Greenway, is kind of what will be discussed, presented. Mr. Edgerton, did you want to comment on that at all as our Parks Board liaison?
As you're saying, tomorrow council will be looking at the Big Branch Greenway. And given that neither the Greenways Committee nor the Parks Board concurred or approved Section 1B, the concern being flooding, I think, is a major concern. I don't know what their decision is going to be. My personal view is that some serious fill would be used in that area to raise the grade by about 18 inches up to where the manholes are. That would make the residents there a little happier with their backyard and more willing to go along with that route down through their backyards. They wouldn't have the traditional flooding they've had over the years. but they would have the greenway. So it's kind of a trade-off. It's a tough decision, and we'll trust what the council comes up with. But if it comes back to the board, we'll be looking at trying to mitigate and make it safer in the long term. I know it's an important link in the greenway system, but so is the bridge over the 440. So there are other parts of this that are longer term. My personal feeling is we need to get it right and make it safe. I keep thinking about the terrible happenings in Texas with the rain and the floods. This section of the Big Branch Greenway flooded a few months ago, 18 inches deep in about 10 minutes. So there's no system of getting a phone call that it's flooding and sending a truck out with cones. I mean, it has to be real in place. And hopefully we can find a good, safe alternative for what we all recognize as a vital link in the long term. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely a very important link and something to, will be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. Okay, I think that is it. Does anyone have any upcoming events to announce? I think, yeah, the main one's not really so much an event, but just upcoming is tomorrow's council meeting with the agenda item for the active mobility and downtown mobility plan. You know, the BPAC has spent quite a lot of time and effort on that, so hopefully that will come to resolution tomorrow. And also the update, movement on, or at least potential movement on the Greenway. But does anyone else have any other events? I know we're starting to get into the holidays here, so things are a bit sparse.
I'll say Oaks and Spokes is having their annual Cranksgiving event this Sunday, the 23rd.
That's right, yeah.
That is sort of their rolling food drive, if you will. It's a really fun event. It's usually held at Crank Arm Brewing. That's this Sunday. I'm not going to be able to make it, but I'll be out of town. But otherwise, I would be.
Okay, and if nothing else, then, like I mentioned, we will not be meeting in December due to the holidays, and so our next BPAC meeting, commission meeting, will be January 26th in, well, the agenda needs updated, 2026, not 2025, but January 26th nonetheless. Will be our next BPAC commission meeting, and if there's nothing else, we will see everyone then. Thank you.